Krishna, dear devotees, good morning. I don't have a book slide, so I can find the book here, which is reading today the additional verses we can mentioned in the text. So reading from the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 29, which is called Talks Between Narada and King Prachyabarhi. Verses is 1a, 1b. 1a, 2. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Prabhu, could you please use the
Yes,
little...
I'm just taking microphone. Thank you. So the verse sounds like this. Sarvesham eva jatunam sattatam deha poshane ashti pragya samayata ko visheshashtadaninam labdhe dhante manushyatvam hitva deha dehasadgraham atmasritya vihayedam jivatma savishishyate. Synonyms. Sarvesham, all, eva, certainly, atunam, of animals, satatam, always, deha, poshane, to maintain the body, ashti, there is, pragya, intelligence, samyata, samayata, resting on, kaha, what, vishesha, difference, tada, them, narinam, of the human beings, Labdva, having attained, iha, here, ante, at the end of many births, manushyatvam, a human life, hitva, after giving, deha adi, in the gross and subtle body, asadgraham, an incorrect conception of life, atma, of spiritual knowledge, sritya, by the path, Vihaya, idam, this body, jiva atma, the spirit soul, saha, that, vishishyate, becomes prominent. Translation. A desire to maintain body, wife and children is also observed in animal society. The animals have full intelligence to manage such affairs. If a human being is simply advanced in this respect, what is the difference between him and an animal? One should be very careful to understand that this human life is attained after many, many births in the evolutionary process. A learned man who gives up the bodily conception of life, both gross and subtle, will, by the enlightenment of spiritual knowledge, become a prominent individual spirit soul, as the Supreme Lord is also. Purport. It is said that man is a rational animal, but from this verse we can also understand that rationality exists even in animal life. Unless there is rationality, how can an animal maintain its body by working so hard? That the animals are not rational is untrue. Their rationality, however, is not very advanced. In any case, we cannot deny them rationality. The point is that one should use one's reason to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for that is the perfection of human life. The purpose. Sarveshameva jatunam satatam deha poshane asti pragya samayata ko visheshastadaninam labdhe hante manusyatvam hitva deha de sangraham atmasritya vihayedam jivatma sa vishishyate. Translation again. A desire to maintain body, wife, and children is also observed in animal society. The animals have full intelligence to manage such affairs. If a human being is simply advanced in this respect, what is the difference between him and an animal? One should be very careful to understand that this human life is attained after many, many births in the evolutionary process. A learned man who gives up the bodily conception of life, both gross and subtle, will by the enlightenment of spiritual knowledge become a prominent individual spirit soul, as the Supreme Lord is also. Omajnana timirandasya gyanandina shalakaya chakshurmilitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha Shri Chaitanya manobhishtam stapitam yena bhutale Svayarupa kadamahyam dadati svapadantikam Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhevacha patitana pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashatyade Shatadine. Krishna. So this is a very important verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, which Srila Prabhupada added in the end of the chapter, which belongs after verse 45. And basically, if you think about it, that the paradigm shift that happened to every single one of us was based on spiritual knowledge which we have attained from other devotees or through Srila Prabhupada books. Usually it goes hand in hand. Devotee has given us the book, saying us few words of enlightenment, and then we read very strong words of our Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada, words of Krishna with his divine purpose, which Krishna dictated through his lotus mouth. And then we get an enlightenment that we're not this body, that we're not even this mind, the subtle body. And based on this paradigm shift, we're adjusting our activities, the daily activities as we perform. We all of a sudden start to wake up early or even too early. We started to chant the holy name. We started to chant different bhajans and study different prayers. We started to associate with devotee. We started to eat only Krishna prasadam. We started to participate in congregational chanting. We started to help and serve in temples, serve deities. We started to hear Shastra on a regular basis and study it individually. And we started to preach on the order of our spiritual master, to share according to our realization what we have mastered through this process, helping others. I liked how Indradyumna Maharaj in his classes on Damodar Leela mentioned that when Krishna was pulling the rope with a grinding mortar which stuck in between the trees, before doing that he was thinking how unpleasant it is to be bound. In other words, he developed compassion to those trees which are bound by those forms of tree life form, which are just standing in one place. And Krishna felt very uncomfortable being bound. And through that compassion of being bound, he decided to liberate the trees. Of course, it all goes parallel with Narada Muni's curse and blessing, and he wanted to fulfill the desire of his pure devotee, which is the prime reason. But there were other reasons also, which in Krishna's pastimes are always present. Multiple purposes, multiple reasons, inner reasons, outer reasons, external, internal reasons, secondary reasons, and so forth. And it is the great compassion of the Lord on conditioned souls. That's why he comes as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to deliver us through the sound vibration of Krishna, of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Last lecture I was describing Vishnu and Krishna, who is the original. I did a little more research. Not more research, I just did more reading of Shastra basically. And in that reading I was jubilated to see how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was given Hare Krishna Mahamantra and Krishna, love to Krishna in particular, to everyone who he has met in his pilgrimage in South India. Sometimes he would be chanting Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Raksha. Krishna, 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 Pahima. Sometimes he'll be chanting this, sometimes he'll be chanting just Hari, Hari, sometimes he'll be chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, quite often, most of the time. And whoever he has met, immediately, the love of Godhead was ignited, immediately. Either he was chanting and they were ignited, either dormant love to Krishna, either he hugged them and immediately they were completely blissed by this touch of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu transcendental body. So whoever he had dispute with, they all have surrendered to the Lord, whether it was logician Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, whether it was Mayavadi sannyasi Prakashananda Saraswati, whether there was a Buddhist leader who had first had to die before to surrender, but then Lord Chaitanya said to his followers, chant loudly Hare Krishna mantra into his ear, which they did, and then he came back to consciousness and started chanting. Also, Krishna and Hari and everybody were perplexed. Everybody was astonished, both the Buddhist students, but also those who were witnessing the whole scene. And then there was a Brahmana who was very much attached to Lord Rama, name of Lord Ramachandra. And then through association with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all of a sudden, Lord Chaitanya left, and then when he was passing by again, he was seeing the same Brahmana chanting the name of Lord Krishna. And so Lord Chaitanya asked, what happened? You were chanting always Lord Rama's name. Why that happened? And so he explained that after meeting you, after hearing this name from you, I cannot take it from my lips. He confessed that I did study the Shastra. I know that Lord Krishna's name is superior, but I know that, he explained that if you chant 1,000 times Lord Vishnu name, the same result you can achieve by just chanting 3 times Lord Rama's name. And then the same result you can attain by just chanting 1 time Lord Krishna's name. But because he was attached to Lord Rama's name and he was chanting him constantly, he was completely satisfied until the moment he met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's how, and then it's the Shastra reconfirmed in his personal realization. The other time he met a devotee, Venkatapata, who was Sri Vaishnava, and they had a debate for for Lord Narayana and Lord Krishna's form were superior. I think I narrated that one last time. That Lord Chaitanya jokingly asked, why if Lord Narayana's wife is constantly on his chest, why all of a sudden she's attracted to the form of Krishna and wants to participate in the Rasa Lila dance? Whereas we know that gopis of Vrindavan, even Lord Krishna manifests the form of Narayana, they're not attracted. What's happening? What's wrong here? Why the form of the Lord is not attracted to a certain category of devotees? And so basically, it's a long conversation, but basically Venkatapata got convinced, he has acknowledged that you are right. This is the truth. This is absolute truth. And then, of course, Lord Chaitanya finds 2 beautiful writings, Krishna Karnamrita and Brahma Samhita. When he finds this 5th chapter of Brahma Samhita, he becomes so astonished, so jubilant, all the symptoms of ecstasy manifested in his body, and he travels. He makes a copy. He travels with those 2 books and gives it as a present to Ramananda Roy in a complete jubilation. That, he said these are the 2 most I forgot the words he used, but like the greatest treasures that you can ever find, in essence. And because you can, if you read Brahma Samhita, and unfortunately we don't have it published, I think, as a maybe little book in ISKCON BBT. I hope we'll get that somehow or other. But we do have, we read, definitely we chanted Brahma Samhita when we got initiated like that. But I did read once with translations thoroughly, Brahma Samhita, and indeed those verses that Brahma chants, of course we chant 2 every morning during deity greetings, and we chant also 2, one the same and one different when we bathe deities. So we do chant 3 verses a day. If we participate in the morning program and if we do Archana. But of course there are more, and those verses are wonderfully explaining that Lord's abode, Goloka Vrindavan, is this central planet, and it explains that there are, 1/4 of the creation, of a total creation, is just material creation. There, three-fourths, and I don't know how you count it in unlimitedness, but that's that what's given there also, and it's a spiritual world which its center is Goloka Vrindavan, where Radha and Krishna reside. So when we get this knowledge through the Guru Parampara and through we are Rupa Nugas, we are getting this all from Rupa Goswami's teaching, which was delivered to us through empowerment by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There in Prayag, he has narrated all the stories, all the knowledge to Rupa Goswami that he could then narrate in either stories or beautiful, eloquent dramas like Vidagda Madhava, Lita Madhava, in wonderful signs like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or Lagu Bhagavatamrita, which has also stories in it. So in very poetic, beautiful Sanskrit, Rupa Goswami would be giving us knowledge like Upadishamrita. For us, for neophytes, to start practicing properly Krishna consciousness, he was personally empowered with this mission by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But interesting enough that how I just learned recently, how Sanatana Goswami heard, and what actually Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, they were already thinking to give up their material positions as ministers of Nabob Hussain Shah, Ministry of Finances and Ministry of, International Relationships or something. So they basically big advisors for the ruler. So they were contemplating on giving up those posts, but apparently, the final reasoning that they got, or the sign that they got that this is the time to give it up, was that at one night, Nabob Hussain Shah, he asked Sanatana Goswami to come. He had some advisory, he wanted to get some advice from him. So while he was walking on the street, in the dead of night, was apparently bad weather also, he overheard, as he was passing by one house, a conversation between husband and wife, because they heard the noise. The husband asked his wife, who can travel in such a dead of night somewhere? It's night and it's a horrible weather, and so the wife answered to her husband that either it's a thief or a dog, jackal, or a ruler's dog, somebody who's like has to do it because king orders him to do it. And so apparently Sanatana Goswami, he really, when he heard it, he started to contemplate that they are dependent on the person who is not worth it being dependent on, because as devotees already, big devotees really, they really wanted to depend only on Lord Mahaprabhu, Lord Krishna's mercy. And as devotees, really, we will want to surrender, to use the Sharanagati and surrender fully to the Lord, as it is his instruction. So they were very much well versed in Shastra, and they were contemplating, and apparently this triggered that move that they started to travel to meet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because they heard he went to Vrindavan. And so on the way, they got those news much later. So by the time they got the news, Lord Chaitanya already reached Vrindavan and he was just turning back. So when they were traveling from Navadvip and Lord Chaitanya was traveling from Vrindavan, they just met in the middle in Prayag. And the most holy place where Kumbh Mela is performed, I think now Srila Prabhupada also brought disciples to participate in this big festival, of course, mainly for preaching, but also for purification. And at that place, Lord Chaitanya met with Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, and That's the famous pastime when they had the straw in between their teeth and they were saying the prayers. Actually, that prayer that Rupa Goswami chanted there at that moment when meeting Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so famous, probably the most famous out of all Rupa Goswami's prayers, which we chant daily when we offer bhoga to the Lord. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prabhapadayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Dushan. It's the most confidential prayer at the same time so available, explaining the glories of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being so munificent, so magnanimous, that he gives the love of Godhead to anyone who's not even knowing the God, who's not even deserving it like this. And this is the biggest treasure that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought. So he invokes those topmost feelings in any conditioned soul. He can really ignite such soul through just hearing process of holy name. This is very confidential, actually. And through that feeling, really, first we are experiencing some kind of bliss which we never heard of, experienced before, at least in this lifetime. It can happen also through prasadam, of course, and, through any really connection with his divine energy in any form. But certainly, holy name astonishes us because we don't know, it doesn't belong to any of our rational things that we used to do, as in these words explain. Rational, how to properly work, how to properly sleep, how to properly eat, how to properly propagate, or how to properly defend. We're using this rational thinking to do these things, and as Prabhupada explains, it's a little bit better than animals, a little bit, because animals, we can see here cows, they're quite intelligent, they know where to get their feed, where to get their water, the mineral stones, the grass, and they know how to defend from each other, to eat first. But then sometimes their rational abilities are not so high, meaning that they're not very much conscious of their bodies. And so when the cow is standing back to the water trough and the time comes to poop, they can poop right into the water trough where they drink in water. So there's not enough rational thinking, understanding that I have to move a few steps because I'll be later thirsty, needing to drink this water, which now will be contaminated. So that rational thinking is not there. Human beings have a little bit more rational thinking. In other words, we're a little bit more conscious of our body or of our positions, of our situations, and so forth. But as in Kali Yuga especially, we're not so much different. Sometimes Prabhupada would use an expression of refined animals. Refined two-legged animals. Means that we're doing the same things that animals do. And if we don't have that higher purpose, why are we doing this? If we don't ask that question, why are we doing this? Even in Bhakti, we should ask that question. Why are we chanting holy name? Why are we attending morning program? Why are we reading these? We have constantly tax our brains with this question to be a little bit more conscious of what we're doing and why are we doing this? Why are we chanting morning prayers? Do I actually remember what the morning prayer means? Maybe I should reread the purport or the translation of the mantras that we're reading. In other words, we have to be more conscious, and that's what Prabhupada says here right at the end of the purport. The point is that one should use one's reason. Reason means intelligence, right? To understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for that is the perfection of human life. In the beginning, we get the taste, which is very nice. Lord Chaitanya is very merciful. But then we have to understand the meaning of our mantra. We have to understand the tattva, that Nam Prabhu is a person, and he can reveal himself. It's his own time. This is his own desire. And from our side, we only have to be persistent. Yes, we do have to chant, as our Acharya asks us to chant at least 16 rounds. We have to do it attentively. We have to do it without offenses. Why we have to do it? Because we want to attract Lord Krishna's attention. Because if we do it attentively, if we do it without offenses, that behavior pleases Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as he himself exhibits in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Trinada Pisanichna, Tarora Pisaishna, Manina Manadana Kirtani Sadhari. He was a perfection of this verse he has compiled himself. That's the behavior that is expected from devotees. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu shows, by example, how to perform. You know, even when he was debating with either Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya or Prakashananda Saraswati, he was so meek and humble. He was sitting with Prakashananda Saraswati in the place where they were washing their feet. In other words, a very dirty place. You know, not expecting that he will be called out to sit in some special place, enlightened. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was humbly listening for how many days? 7 days or longer. Just listening without saying a word, not interrupted. Before he was asked, why are you so silent? I don't understand whether you can comprehend what I'm saying to you. Yes, I do comprehend, but I don't understand why I have to change the meaning of Vedanta. What should I explain? And he said, oh, well, maybe I can explain me the meaning of Vedanta. Then he did. On the Atmarama verse, he explained so many different angles. So I'm just contemplating that we are so lucky to have that knowledge to not identify, at least in theory, and through that theory, trying to apply it in practice, not identify ourselves with the body and mind. What it means is that, what it means practically, is that we continue practicing devotional service despite of body and mind. In other words, there's bodily distractions, we still chant and hear holy name as much as the body allows us. So we are still determined to do that. Mind disturbances is disease number one in Kali Yuga. And despite those disturbances, because we don't identify ourselves with the mind, we continue to practice devotional service. Even the mind gives us some very comma marks, what do you call it? Gives you some nice idea what to do. We know, based on transcendental knowledge, no, we should not do that. So even the mind, even if it's got contaminated, if it's dirty, it can still give us some idea of what to do in terms of sense enjoyment or in terms of activities not connected with Krishna. We have the transcendental knowledge to counteract that, to understand, hey, this is just the mind. It's been contaminated, it's been disturbed. I should chant more Hare Krishna. I should go to devotees to seek their shelter. I should honor prasadam in association of devotees. I should read Prabhupada and hear what he says about my idea that I just concocted in my mind just now, based on the desires that are hanging with me for millions of births. We should remind ourselves this is such a rare opportunity, as in this verse it says, such a rare opportunity. This evolutionary process of those cows which we are seeing behind Tarka. It's so nice. You see Vrindavan cows. I see the Zebu breed behind Tarka. And so, yes, we should understand that we went through so many life forms of bodies before we get this human form body, and in this human form body we met the devotees, which is also rare, still rare. In many places almost impossible still to meet, like Vietnam, different places, Korea. Some places are still, some Muslim countries, still difficult to meet devotees. So we should not waste this opportunity, very rare opportunity. And just 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. Only 500 years, 536 years now. and he was present for 48 years. So less than 500 years, he was still present here. And now he's present through his disciples, through Prabhupada. He was so present. When Prabhupada was asked by his fellow God brothers about, what do you think about this foretelling that the holy name will be sang and chanted and heard in every village and town? Is it metaphor? Is it just about India? Prabhupada said, no, this is as it is. But who will do it then? Who will do it? Prabhupada says, one crazy person will do it, who has full faith in his guru's instructions. And just in essence, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what Prabhupada replied. One crazy person will do it. Crazy in a way that he will be crazy because it is crazy to travel to, heart of the Western civilization back in that time. It was all crazy. This idea is completely kaput. It's crazy. But because one is like Lord Nityananda, he was drunkard with love of Godhead, and that's why he could go anywhere. Either it's crocodiles or it's pubs or any places that Lord Chaitanya would not go as sannyasi. Lord Nityananda would go and give love of Godhead to the most undeserved sinful persons like Jagai Madai of that caliber. He would give. Why? Because he was drunkard. He was constantly drunken with love of Godhead. And so it required a little bit of that to give to, a drug addicts, hippies in Lower East Side in New York, an old man who generally that generation wouldn't even listen to anyone above 30. They've been addicted to all sort of sinful activities. And to them, Prabhupada was giving pure love of God. Just sometimes think about it. How incomprehensible it is. This is the power of divine energy. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj was telling about his disciple who was 20 years addict on heroin, on the most hardest drug ever existed, I think. Heroin is, what happens if somebody takes heroin is that his bodily brain activities and function changes in a way. It says that it cannot fix itself. It cannot rejuvenate back to normal. So in other words, such addicts are lifelong addicts. There's practically no chance to get off the needle when you go to this stage. This disciple of his was 7 times in jail. He was 20 years heroin addict. Yet at some point, he understood when he met devotees that Krishna can save me from this. He had such a faith that this mantra and these people and this God can save him from these disastrous conditions, that this faith alone, and following the process, starting chanting, was enough to get him off the hook, off the needle, and off all the abominable activities, the Jana Sangha, and all of those. He's now practicing devotee for years already, not taking any more heroin. And even if he will come back to that one day, say something happens, the fact that he was able to practice years without touching it, and we hope and pray that he will make it back to Godhead in this lifetime with this strong faith, with actually maybe many of us may be lacking, maybe I'm speaking for myself, I'm lacking such faith in Krishna. So that desperation and determination is needed to understand. And once we understand, the miracles are happening right in front of our eyes. I have to stop here, I'm not watching the time. We have 7 minutes left. There's something in the chat. Oh, it's hard to hear the echo. I'm sorry. But it does say USB. I know. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the system is all. The mic is on, and anyway, I mean, we are finished by now. So. Oh, I see. I see. Okay. All right. Any questions or comments from devotees? I can read the verse again while devotees are contemplating. The desire to maintain body, wife, and children is also observed in animal society. The animals have full intelligence to manage such affairs. If a human being is simply advanced in this respect, what is the difference between him and animal? One should be very careful to understand that this human life is attained after many, many births in the evolutionary process. A learned man who gives up the bodily conception of life, both gross and subtle, will, by the enlightenment of spiritual knowledge, become a prominent individual spirit soul, as the Supreme Lord is also. So, very bright destination for all of us in this verses given today. Thank you very much for a wonderful class. I appreciate it. I especially appreciated hearing about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and his devotees. Thank you. Thank you, Devaki Priti. Yes, I was doing my little research on Vishnu and Krishna form. And I couldn't find, at least in Srimad Bhagavatam, I couldn't find anywhere that Lord Narayana would all of a sudden take form of Krishna. You know, it just doesn't happen. Krishna appears in on Vasudev's Devaki's, and then he takes Lord Narayana's form to show them and specify them immediately that don't worry, Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead came. He does it with Arjuna on a battlefield of Kurukshetra, that he first exhibits the universal form, and then he diminishes it to the four-handed form of Narayana, and then back to the Lord Shama Sundar. We can see he did it with gopis, he took Narayana's form. We also see that, yes, Narayana is possessing of all those four weapons, to his blessing his devotees, the conch and the flower, and then to his punishing the miscreants, the Sudarshan Chakra and the club. But we see that Lord Krishna is using Sudarshana Chakra. You know, he's playing the flute, but when the time comes to kill Shishupala, he's using Sudarshana Chakra. Same like Narayana did when he delivered the Gajendra elephant, or when he was punishing Durvasa Muni for offending Ambarish Maharaj. Lord Krishna does the same. He's using Sudarshana Chakra when killing Shishupal. He's using Sudarshana Chakra, Lord Krishna. From Dwaraka, he came and finished Paundraka demon with Kashi, whatever the name was. He kills, he again chops his head off with Sudarshana Chakra. And then in chapter 89, when he travels to the to rescue the children of Brahmana, they travel out of the universe with Arjuna in his chariot, and the horses are so afraid of the darkness when they crossed over after all of those layers of the universe. There was a complete darkness. Even the horses, transcendental horses of Krishna, got afraid. And so what Krishna does, he releases his Sudarshan Chakra and illuminates it all, and then they get to Mahavishnu's abode. Why? Mahavishnu wants to have darshan of Krishna. So we can see how Krishna is opulent and glorious, and he's he has it all, as Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu says in chapter 64, Qualities of Krishna. Lord Narayana can liberate those last 5 qualities from 55 to 60. Lord Narayana is the source of all incarnations. He can liberate whoever he kills, and so this is all Krishna and Narayana have together, but when it comes to sweetness, that's it. The God at home is more attractive and sweet. Those relationships are naturally more sweet at home than at work, when Lord Narayana has to, rule and govern and maintain and punish and deliver. That's God at work, but God at home is more sweet. So it was nice studying. I like those themes. Actually, I started this study because I was asked that question: who was first, Narayana or Krishna? Vishnu or Krishna? And so when I was studying it, I tried to Google certain things. I just read the pastimes that I remembered, and when I came all together, with so many evidence from Brahma Samhita, from Srimad Bhagavatam, from Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says, "Aham, I am the source of super soul," in an 8th chapter, 8th verse, he says, "I am the source. Aham, I." This is personal. Krishna says here in personal form and says, "Me, I." Same as like Tamaham Bhajami. And when you read it all together, like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, different pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam, then 2 chapters of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traveling through South India on the pilgrimage, so much evidence in Brahma Samhita, and then Nectar of Devotion. And then I don't have access to certain Shastra like Lagu Bhagavatamrita or Krishna Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami, where he specifically elaborates on this topic, explains it all. I cannot read it yet because I haven't read all books of Prabhupada 3 times. Gurudev told me to read 3 times first before touching Shastras of predecessors. So good motivation, but there is more, even more. So this is nice. When I read this like for 3 hours straight, I had to do it at night. I couldn't hold myself. But it was so enlivening, so illuminating. You felt that your consciousness becomes so, I don't know, bright, so the mood, the jubilation you're getting from being in touch with Shastra for so long, it's got very nice effect. Bala, spiritual strength. Chak, probably have a hand raised, sorry. Let's see.
Yeah, wasn't there one instance of Lord Krishna's 4-handed form, then changing to the 2-handed form when Krishna took birth, when he first appeared? Initially appeared 4-handed, isn't it?
With Vasudeva and Devaki, he appeared
Right.
first. Yeah, it may be so that Krishna showed the Lord Narayan's form first to pacify Vasudeva, because they were afraid for the child safety, because they were in such an anxiety. So Krishna did it out of love to pacify them first. It's like when Hanuman was about to report that Sita is alive, he was contemplating how to do it. So he wanted to say, Sita, I found Sita. So he was thinking, if I say I, that's not nice for the servant, because, I put myself first. So he wanted to say, Sita, I found. But then he was thinking that if he would say Sita to the Lord Ramachandra would start to worry, what happens to Sita? Something happened to her. He died, or, whatever, something bad. So he didn't want to cause anxiety to Lord Ramachandra to say her name. So he said, in the end, found Sita I. Found, that's what happened, and Sita I. In this way, Hanuman. And in the same way, Krishna didn't want to disturb Vasudeva and Devaki, who were in such an anxiety. They already lost 7 children, Kamsa killed. And so they were in such an anxiety because that was the child was supposed to be killed by Kamsa. And that's why Lord Krishna appears and for Narayan saying, hey, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead, don't worry. And then takes his little baby form. At least that's how I remember from explanation. And of course, yes, Sri Vaishnavas would be telling, aha, you see, he appeared first, that's still on the right. But you have to understand the background. Okay, but this is probably the only incident, right? Any case, are they opening or are we doing? Guru Puja? Okay, so we have to finish here. Thank you, dear devotees. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srimad Prabhupada ki jai.